Hello. Hello, hello. Welcome. My name is Georgia Court. I'm the proprietor here at the bookstore, and I'm so pleased to see so many come to hear wonderful poetry. And before we get started with today's reading, what I'd like to let you know about is a very interesting and wonderful poetry event that's going to happen here in mid-March, and that's our annual Poetry Life Festival. So Poetry Life 2023 is going to feature two terrific poets, Martine Espada, who's a National Book Award winning poet, and Patricia Jabba Wesley, who has won lots of awards. She's a terrific poet, and she's Liberian. So the focus of Poetry Life this year is on, writing about heritage. So there's going to be a lot of focus on that. There are two things that you may be interested in. If you're a poetry writer yourself or would like to write poetry, we are, for the first time as part of Poetry Life, offering workshops. So you can sign up online through our bookstore to take workshops with either Patricia Jabba Wesley or Martine Espada. The dates of those workshops are March 11th through the 13th. Also, separately, on the 13th, we are going to hold our Poetry Life event at Florida Studio Theater. There will be two events that day, a 3 o'clock discussion of writing, ethnicity, and so forth in poetry, featuring Martine Espada, Patricia Jabba Wesley, and Philip Terman, who is known as the poet of the Jewish experience. They're going to be speaking at 3 o'clock and in discussion with the audience at Florida Studio Theater at 3 o'clock on March 13th. Later that day, on March 13th at 7 o'clock, they're going to be reading their poetry, also at Florida Studio Theater. And you can go onto our website and click a link and get your tickets through Florida Studio Theater to do that. So I hope you will consider coming. It's always a good event, always lots of fun. Okay, today we have two terrific readers. I'm going to introduce them one at a time just before they come to read. This is our first time reading here, and it's just so delightful to have a newly minted, maybe not, she'll maybe tell us more about herself, poet read here. Her name is Dariana Alvarez. She was born in 2001 in Fajardo, is that pronounced correctly? Puerto Rico. She is a third-year student at New College. Think about that for a minute. She lives in Florida, where she spends most of her time writing poetry. Her work has appeared in the Elan International Student Literary Magazine, Bridge 8, Oyster River Pages, the Sextant Review, and are forthcoming in the Red Coyote and the I-70 Review. So she's an accomplished poet at a very young age. Please welcome Dariana Alvarez.
Good afternoon. First of all, I'd like to say that I'm very grateful that so many people came out to hear both of us read today. I haven't read in public for a while, but I'm very glad to be able to come back and do it in such a small and somewhat intimate feel. So I'm very excited about doing this. I'm very excited that my work was recognized and acknowledged. So I guess I'd like to start off by, because we already talked about, me publishing these poems, but really I'd like to start off by kind of talking about what poetry really does mean to me. Poetry for me has always been a medium for healing. Poetry has just been a way for me to think about things that have happened to me before, think about maybe trauma that's happened to other people, and being able to just connect with those feelings. allow myself to feel how I need to feel and to just move forward. And there is a quote that I really love by Anne Lamott. So if you've never bought or read her book, Bird by Bird, especially if you're a writer, I definitely recommend that you read it. It's great. So she writes, "You own everything that happened to you. Tell your stories. If people wanted you to write warmly about them, they should have behaved better." So it's a quote that I definitely live by. I understand that not everyone wants to read poems that are about very heavy topics, but for me, irregardless of who's reading, I just love the idea of being able to take a part of me and present it to everyone. So yeah, so with that, I'd like to start with my first poem. So this poem is quite special to me, not because it's the first poem I've ever written, but because it's the first poem that I have ever gotten published. The poem really embodies why the Anne Lamott quote means so much to me. So in this poem, I write from the perspective of my younger self in the ways that past trauma has affected my relationship with my father, even through the midst of his recovery from alcoholism that he unfortunately would later relapse back to. This is my father recovering. The thudding of my father's footsteps reaches the tiles of our bathroom floor like webbed feet slapping land. My feet make their way under suffocating blankets that my father used to pass out on after long nights of chugging 6 cans of Bud Lights. The breeze slithers up my legs, making the tiny black hairs sprout upwards. The last time it was this cold, my father's fists were on my body, hard and made for working, with heaviness, leaving black and blue marks that reminded me how I always needed to be a good girl. I touched them, stings pulsating throughout my body. He'd leave the same reminders on my mother, who left work all day while my father wasted his life away at home. My father started going to church, telling me that God was going to change everything. He shows his yellow-tinted teeth through a smile I had been praying for. Go back to sleep or watch some cartoons if you'd like, he tells me as he brushes his teeth and puts on his sweaty work clothes. My father's body no longer sweaty, eyes no longer red, no longer perfume with the strong smell of alcohol. My father gets ready for his first job as I am watching the early morning cartoons. He checks the time and kisses my cheek. My small body shakes, pulls away from my father's lips, and begs me to go back under the sheets. The following poem is one that will soon be published in Inscape magazine, so I'm pretty excited about that. In this poem, I write about a night on which I had first confessed my feelings to someone I love. In doing so, I acknowledge the courage and bravery that it takes to say these things out loud, and to allow myself the opportunity to both give and receive love while healing. This is Lake Hollingsworth. The white bench is ours. My hands cupped his head as tears rolled down my face at the craziness of saying I love you. Trees with their Spanish mosses stare us down and hang their heads at the sight of young love. We shared a kiss at every red light on the car ride there, hands held as we semicircle the lake. Everyone else seems invisible while he is the only one to stand out. Black hair, like how my father wore it when he was younger in photos. I definitely feel it, but I don't know if I can even say it out loud. I say through sobs and shaky hands, as he tells me he loves me a little too much. Love was reserved for the times that I felt brave enough to not put my father's face on another man, or mistaken clone for alcohol, or to mix gentle voices with screams, or to believe that every nighttime car ride will be my last. My hands go through his hair the same way I'd scratch my father's shaven head when I was little. I love you. I do. I choke out. The next two poems I'll be reading were written during a time where I started really recognizing the power that my womanhood carries. So in this first poem, I write about the insecurities that society places on women's bodies and how specifically Eurocentric beauty standards are placed on women of color, and my own personal journey of accepting my body as it is. This is Planting Seeds. My first grade self sits in a classroom where light-colored haired girls stare at my arms. I stare at their bodies. These were the roots. Thin girls who could bend like branches, blonde girls with pale skin and hairless bodies. You're so hairy for a girl, they'd say. And my girlhood strips from me, parts itself like glue, sticky, wet, and messy as I pull down my sleeves. Years later, I tell my mother how my body is a garden that grows nothing but weeds, how I seem to sweat yet the fruits of my labor never appear because the scale numbers stay the same, how my period never comes anymore. My doctor diagnoses me with unkind hormones that grow massive amounts of these prickly strands. He hands me birth control, tells me that it'll pull out the weeds in my body, yet my eyes look toward the ceiling light. Women are beautiful, clean, but my body is not. The leaves of my body cannot be fixed by the bright light above me. This cactus of a body reminds me what I can't have, a small figure. Hair only in a certain place. My large body always requests a shave, a release of this pain that I will eventually get tired of maintaining, stop taking the pill that prevents my body from blossoming into the wildflower it should be, that bathes in the sunlight and doesn't mind its old appearance. With this poem, I recollect my religious childhood, in which my own personal choices as a woman was very limited. So I tell this journey through an allusion to the Brothers Grimm's famous fairy tale, Rapunzel. This is Mantle of Hair. And this poem does begin with an epigraph, so I'll go ahead and read that. Ah, thou wicked child, cried the enchantress, what do I hear thee say? I thought I had separated thee from all the world, and yet thou hast deceived me. Rapunzel, by Jacob and William Grimm. My mother would comb my insecurities. This is how it must be, the way God intended for a woman to live. Stuck in a tower, I count each strand, each one echoing my inability to be myself. Each person a tree I want to climb, discover its branches, and allow my hair to lower my curious body back to the earth, and feel the ground for the first time again in my virgin feet. Yet my anxious body finds itself in a desert, where the sun glares down at me, and the moon whispers how I do not belong because I know nothing. She's much too annoying, and much too sheltered, the people say. She's so full of anxiety. Look me up and down as if they'd never seen a woman with long hair and a dress before. My feet try to introduce themselves to the grass and expect that a garden can grow in between my toes. My tower hadn't taught me how many thorns roses can grow around a new person's feet, and how people create scars where seeds are supposed to be. Maybe somebody will wrap their arms around me, like how baby monkeys cling tightly to their mothers, that every life is precious and that they care enough about mine to keep me around, as if I had made a strong mark on their life. I sit down, look at my old self one more time as the scissors make themselves comfortable in my hands, all that hair that concealed me like a cloak, thick, dark hair, losing themselves onto the floor, tangles and knots, creating a jungle that I am no longer trapped in. The grass meets me again. This time, I welcome myself and plant my own seeds. In this final poem for today's reading, I play with the idea of not being Puerto Rican enough. So in this poem, I completely embrace that identity. However, growing up in the States, I feel like certain cultural aspects can be lost or dwindled. So I compare my favorite fruit, strawberries, to many sentimental aspects of my life. This is Fresas. I want to write a poem that compares Puerto Rico to strawberries, and made I become a real Latina poet just without the Spanish. In school, I didn't know that strawberries in Spanish was fresas, so I just conjure up my best Boricua accent and say, it's actually a strawberry, and go down the list of words I didn't know the Spanish translation of. Hang on to my brother's words when he tells me that even though I was born on the island, he is more Puerto Rican than I am. Take the romantic route and say my boyfriend's tongue is like strawberries, wet and sweet, like when we bite off the red of the strawberry at a festival. Admire the beauty of the pink trapped inside. I pretend the pink is the intimate part of my body, wanting to open itself to a world of men. Or pink, like my papa's alcoholism. Pink is the world of men, all with its own agenda, brutality, secrets. I take a sip of the pink and call it Puerto Rico, fully embodied, so sweet, so wet. These are my fresas. Thank you.
And by the way, after both poets have read, there will be a time for discussion or questions or whatever. So if you have any questions or comments for them, please pick them up, because that makes a fun discussion. Our next reader is Don McLagan. Don is an entrepreneur and a poet. His newest book is Chappaquiddick Poems, a poetry visit to that sometimes separate island. He's author of 2 previous books of poetry, Fragments in a Glass Bowl and Tug at the Knot. In the tech world, he has been a founder and executive in 5 companies in the Boston area. Don lives and writes in Chappaquiddick and in Sarasota, Florida. And I want to let you know he has his newest book with him, and you can get a copy by donating to the Chappaquiddick Community Center. So he'll probably tell you more about that as he speaks. But there we are, and I'm going to raise the mic a little bit because, Don, I think you might be an inch or 2 taller than I am. What do you think? Yeah.
I'm the one who was not born in 2001. So Chappaquiddick is an island off the east end of Martha's Vineyard. It's about 6 square miles of territory, a large part of which is wet. What do you know about Chappaquiddick? The first question anybody asks about Chappaquiddick is, where's the bridge? And I'm going to read you a poem about it, but I want to make a point that Eggertown and the main part of Martha's Vineyard is over here, and there is no bridge from that part of Martha's Vineyard to Chappaquiddick. The bridge that Ted Kennedy had a problem with is over here. So, where's the bridge? Deflated tires squirm on its wooden planks. Across it are loose sand and beach grass, Chappaquiddick's thin shield from the Atlantic. Nothing remains of the earlier bridge, picked apart by gawkers pursuing gossip and souvenirs. Now with firm footings and stout guardrails, the new bridge endures controversy, photographers, and children playing poo sticks. We'll come back to poo sticks. A few hardy owners depend on the sturdy trestles to return home. Fishermen bless it. The trustees bundle tourists across to learn about Cape Pogue, its lighthouse, Fresnel lens, and shifting perch. And under the arched timbers of the bridge, twice every day, indifferent tide courses through Pogue and into Pocha Pond. Where's the bridge? So, poo sticks. Who knows about poo sticks? Winnie the Pooh, this is. I know some of you do because we played poo sticks on the bridge. Poo sticks is when you drop sticks in competitively on one side of the bridge upstream and race to the other side to see whose stick comes out first. An important game to play on the bridge. Most of my poems are free verse, which is to say they don't have end rhymes and they don't have a particular rhythm, and they don't have a particular rhyme pattern to them, a memorable rhyme pattern. But some do, and some seem to require that sort of energy and recall that structured poetry does. Anapests are a form of 3 beats. The Assyrian came down like a wolf on the fold, with his cohorts were gleaming in purple and gold. That's Lord Byron, that's not me. But that's the pattern. The Assyrian came down on the wolf. So I had just about finished this book, and I figured that I had covered most of the places that I loved on Chappaquiddick. And I said, what have I missed? And there was the dog at my feet, and I had no dog poem. So this is a dog poem. It's called Fetch, and it uses anapests, and it rhymes. I think you'll see why. Oh, where is there joy like a dog on the beach? A friendly wet pooch dancing just out of reach, unless there's a cookie not held with conviction that the sly dog can pilfer with no cookie friction. She's found an old ball-colored sandy chartreuse that is sodden and dripping with fresh doggy juice. She wants you to throw it, her tail's all a wag, so you gingerly toss it and look for a rag. Then before you can find one, the canine athlete is back with a ball which he drops at your feet. You're into it now, she has got you enthralled, so you reach down and full-handed pick up that ball. It's grown late, so you aim at some far distant spot. And this time you throw it with all that you've got. But she's back and she's smiling before you can go. And you, smiling too. Make just one more throw. That's the only rhyming poem we're going to have today. So what are poems of place? I think poems of place arise where the magic of a spot on the earth arrests the hurry of the day. Something that makes you stop what you're doing and notice. So there's a place on Chappaquiddick, the far end here, it's a corner. Just to give you some perspective, it's about 7 miles up here. And about 24 miles over there is Gay Head, where Martha's Vineyard begins. And the sea wants to come this way all the time because of prevailing winds and tides. And it can't because Martha's Vineyard's in the way, until it gets to this point right here where it can swirl around the edge and go up north. And that creates one of the most dynamic environmental areas in all of New England, Waisque Point, which is right on this corner here. So a poem about Waisque. This is a place of pixel elements. Grains of sand, sea spray, salted gale, the material of an impermanent beach. Today, sea and sky are the color of shadows. Coarse wind rakes the sea into a spume and punches it ashore. From the west, the island stretches 20 miles to this spot, and the shoreline blunts the running waves. But here, the beach takes a sharp angle, and the sea rips. Rips the sand which sloughs and sluices, rips itself, churning bait into broth for bluefish and striped bass. Flung pellets sting fishermen, level departing footprints, and only impermanence remains. Waisquy. About a 25-minute walk from Waisquy back in this direction is an entirely different spot. And I didn't have a poem about this spot. I had the Waisquy poem, I had a number of other poems. And this spot that we're going to go to next is a salt marsh. And I was looking for what was the metaphor that would depict a salt marsh. And I was struck by the fact that it was so vastly different from Waisquy. So this poem is called Salt Marsh, and I think you'll see the difference. The crash and suck of waves, the sweep of dunes are elsewhere. Here is the quiet library of the shore. A spindle-legged egret stares as with spectacles through the surface of a salt pool. From its balcony, an osprey lifts and floats above the tufts, scans for a ripple. Amongst the cord grass, hermit crabs scuttle for morsels, like graduate students in the stacks. The platform built for viewing invites us. Something important is here. But like dyslexic children in the foyer of a great Athenaeum, we are stopped at the threshold and can only gaze in wonder. Salt Marsh. So the book is here. I signed copies. Normally it sells for $20. It's free today. You're welcome to make a donation in lieu of any payment to the Chappaquiddick Community Center, to which all the proceeds of the book will go. Chappaquiddick is not the only beautiful place on earth. Sarasota is pretty nice too. And I'd like to read a couple of poems about Sarasota. This first one happened, it comes from Bayfront Park. Sorry, not Bayfront Park, Bird Key Park. When you go over the Ringling Bridge, Bird Key Park is both underneath you and to the right. I take the dog there to swim, and we have to go someplace to dry off before I want her back in the seat of my car. Woman in a straw hat. She sits by herself at the left end of the bench. The seat faces the bay, where sunshine pairs water and sky and blue calm. She doesn't look there, but down towards her hands folded in her lap. White hair is gathered into a tidy bun below her straw hat. Its brim rounds up like a worn smile. She wears a blue and plaid shirt that is too big and is collared for a man's neck. Tide and clouds drift unbidden and without hurry. Sun warms the tender place at the back of her neck where the hair is lifted. On the bench, her body leans to the right, as if toward a shoulder. We live in a neighborhood, I'll come back to that in a moment. A year ago, we decided that the world was too much with us late and soon, and we undertook a year's worth of looking for whimsy, trying to bring something whimsical home each day to help balance that which was going on endlessly in the news. This poem is called Finding Whimsy. This is also all Sarasota. The maestro's socks flash neon red as he lifts his baton. In the pre-dawn, a neighbor washes his black Chevrolet Suburban while wearing his bathrobe and pajamas. The faux tree on the corner hosts an empty Johnny Walker bottle on every faux rim. That is a hell of a lot of empty Johnny Walker bottles. I've been looking for a big aspirin bottle that I could put on the one remaining limb. And on Orange Avenue, the soapy machine still wafts bubbles across the road. Democrats smile, Republicans too. Even the uncommitted mouths of gnarly independents crinkle. It's not that we reach accord, God forbid, but that we find a moment of shared humanity where each of us remembers from the crib that same first tickle on our tummies. How are we doing on time, Georgia?
I'd say you have time for 2 or 3 more.
I live on Irving Street. It's a great place to live. Georgia lives around the corner. And on the wire, as we go out our driveway, a mockingbird hangs out and sings, and he goes on all day. And I don't think he repeats. The virtuoso on Irving Street, full-throated, chest full of melodies, he sings "to-wee, to-wee" on the power line. A seasoned performer, he shows no startle as the dog bursts from the door, grants no notice of my greeting as we pass. Do his songs promise love and loyalty, protect his nest, claim a thorny bush full of berries? Or does he sing because it's a new day, sun warms his wing, and dew gleams like stargrass? In the neighborhood, trucks back and beep. From behind a fence comes the deep baroo of a gated hound. My ears buzz with morning headlines. To-do lists bully my mind. When the dog on her leash and I with my distractions return, the soloist on the power line continues in rapturous disregard. Kiki burr, Kiki burr. There's construction in our neighborhood. Is there construction in your neighborhood? There are 3 new houses on the corner of Alta Vista. We woke up one morning to have the house across the street bulldozed and flat, we have 2 posts at the corner of where you come into our yard, and they are framed right in the center of that picture is a porta potty by Orion Waste Solutions. Think about that name. Perfectly framed by the posts in our driveway, the porta potty stands on a now level lot across the street. The former yellow 1-story house has been crushed and devoured by the relentless clanging excavator. Whatever magic and memories were held inside have escaped into the evening sky. Not all that separates the modest past and the no doubt bigger future is a porta potty whose door faces our driveway. And pasted on that door is this poem. There's a wonderful project in Sarasota called Art in Common Places. What it does is it pairs artists and poets to do a creative event in each of their media that complements each other. They make a poster out of it, and they locate it in 80 or 90 different locations around town. Laundromats, libraries, maybe even police stations. So I was paired up with Pamela Olin, who had a terrific art piece. It's too complicated to explain, but suffice it to say that it's 2 feet by 4 feet, and it's done with translucent resin that has stones and feathers and bones both floated on it and embedded in it. And it was up to us to come to an idea of what that might represent. And on the stones in that on the resin pieces was a giant swirl. It came over and had a little swirl over on this side. And in the center of each was a large stone. One emerald, the other one amethyst. What can you make out of that as a poet? What I made out of that was conversation. You speak, I hear. Your words swirl and pulse pixels of air and tap, tap, tap the bones of my ear. I know the words you send, their definitions, syllables, their sound. I could repeat, even spell them back to you. So you could think, yes, yes, you listened. But what you say bears the worn emerald of your scars and celebrations, and I attend with the amber of my own. To understand, we search shape and shadows suspended in the translucence between us. Conversation. Wow. I'd like to finish with a love poem. This particular love poem is for my wife, Barbara, who's in the middle of the back there. Actually, I love all those women in the back. I love the women in the front, too. Here you come, down the long stair. Oh, we live in a 2-story building. And we have 18 stairs from the first, we have high ceilings, to the second floor, 18 stairs. So that's not great when you're getting old unless you want exercise. It's kind of like running the stadium at Harvard. Here you come down the long staircase of our life together. In the loose, comfortable pajamas I gave you last Christmas. You take one stair at a time, catching up the second foot, because too many miles on the bike, walks at pickleball, hours couched with books and bridge, leave your back stiff, your knees creaky. I've been up since 5, reading about division, war, hate. Now here you come for your coffee, and I smile. Not because I have forgotten, but because I can't. And you're coming down the stairs to share the news with me. Thank you for being here.
Okay, I'm going to invite both of our poets to come up to the microphone. And if you have questions, comments, which I hope you do, this is the time. Okay, I'll get out of your way. So come on up here. And I'm going to take the microphone out of this. You can pass the microphone back and forth. Okay. Questions? Comments? Over there. I see one over there.
At what age did each of you start writing poetry?
So, that's a tough question.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes. Repeat the question. Thank
So the
you.
question was, at what age did you start writing poetry? So I started writing poetry around like 4th grade. So I would say I was like 9 or 10. Yeah, I had a great teacher who saw that I had potential in creative writing, and he told me to write a poem that is actually meaningful to me. I did that, and I've been writing poetry ever since.
I wrote in high school, and it was, I had a teacher, you had a teacher too, who encouraged you. Teachers make all the difference. And I had a teacher in high school who was very supportive of my writing, and it was hard to be supportive of their writing.
Yeah. Who else has something they'd like to say? Yeah, this gentleman here.
I have what will appear to be a strange question. I haven't really read poetry or studied poetry since I was a freshman and sophomore in college. But I'm wondering, but I do listen to music all the time, particularly contemporary jazz. And I'm thinking, do you ever see poetry in the lyrics of, I'm thinking of a particular Chet Baker song, what is it? I don't miss you anymore, except in spring. And then, I mean, there's so many beautiful songs, particularly written in the 30s and the 40s, with quite beautiful lyrics. I'm wondering if you see the poetry in the lyrics of the music, which is, anyway, that's my question.
So could you repeat that so that you hear over there?
Yeah, so the question was, do we find, poetry in like the lyrics of music or songs? I would say definitely. I was actually talking about this with my boyfriend today on our way here. And yeah, I think especially because I do like to listen to rap and I do like to listen to salsa and music from my culture, and I think really there is a lot of poetry like in music, especially with like the way you write lyrics and how you take an experience and you put like rhythm into it, you put sound, emotions, feelings, and I think there's definitely a lot of really great similarities between the two.
A friend of mine, Jill Jupin, is writing a book on the poetry of Bob Dylan.
That was the most obvious one, and Leonard Cohen. But I mean, just regular things that, I'm sure that poets would want poetry to affect people's daily lives.
Yes.
But so few of us are going to sit down and read a book of poetry. But can we be?
But we can
we
listen
have our
to music
introductory
if we
class
can't
for music?
read poetry.
Pardon?
We can listen to music if we can't read poetry.
Right.
Yeah.
Was there another question?
Yeah. Back here?
Your palms are as good as your forehand.
That's my coach.
Good.
Yes, Greg?
Do you each have a particular poet that you're enamored with at this time, and maybe give a reason why?
So the question was if there was a particular poet that we are enamored by. So for me, I definitely really enjoy Natalie Diaz. For those who don't know, she is both a Latina and Native American poet. She writes a lot of narrative poetry about her brother, and seeing how vulnerable she is in her writing really inspires me. And not a poet, but again, when I said I listen to salsa, I love Hector Lavoe. I think he is a poet in his own right, and his music's beautiful. I love his love for Puerto Ricans, my people. So, just when a poet has so much love and so much, like, just beautiful writing, that's what really inspires me and intrigues me.
So I started writing poetry in high school, as I mentioned, with a teacher who encouraged me. But then I got a scholarship that would send me to school wherever I wanted to go as long as I studied engineering, which was a good economic decision. But when I retired the second time, I took up poetry again. And it wasn't long after that I came, and I was concerned about whether, was it legitimate to write poetry? Was that an okay thing for a guy to do? Was that an okay thing for me to do? Was it even okay to think of myself as a poet? And I came across W.S. Merwin, who I fell in love with, and he convinced me that poetry was indeed very much worthwhile, and that if I worked really, really hard, I could be one. And I've been working on that ever since. W.S. Merwin, I commend to you Shadow of Sirius, one of his late books. He's not with us anymore.
He's not, and one of his last maybe his last gig was at Poetry Life here in 2012, I think. Yeah, terrific poet, terrific person. Other questions, other comments? See anybody? No? Well, thank you for
You
coming.
guys have been great. Thank you for
Yeah.